I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Okay, so today on Pro Mindset Podcast, we have Rebecca Smith. She's a performance coach. The name of her company is Complete Performance Coaching. She's based out of Northern California, and she works with a lot of individual sport athletes, and she's been doing this over 20 years.
I've been working with athletes for over 20 years. Oh my gosh.
Give me your elevator speech on, your background, your experience in sports, who's your ideal client.
Okay. So I run a sports psychology coaching business that works specifically with high expectation, high perfection, high aesthetic sports like gymnastics, figure skating, but I also work with team sport athletes who also kind of feel the pressure coming in. I work with a lot of younger athletes, sort of pre-elite, and my focus is really in allowing them to enjoy the process, which actually increases performance exponentially. So they're not just suffering through these crazy 2-a-day trainings. They're actually doing it for themselves. They're passionate. They're not requiring themselves to be some unattainable perfection, benchmark. They are just enjoying it and then becoming these amazing athletes as a result.
Well, that sounds awesome. What is your secret sauce in terms of, is it faith-based? Is it psychological-based? What's kind of your
It's all evidence-based in sports psychology theory. I love flow theory. So that's sort of one of the underpinnings, but a lot of it is this concept of systematic desensitization around fear and phobia, because I've found that the thing that impacts confidence the most is fear. So when fear is up, confidence is down, and when confidence is up, fear is down. So we figure out how to ease into those fears, building courage as you go, and then creating a system of communication and sort of building up your, I call it your support squad around you, so that you can feel safe to really emerge into the fire of fear and come out the other side basically unafraid.
That's awesome. What is the low-hanging fruit in terms of when you start working with a new athlete?
It's absolutely 100% fear of failure. It's almost always these highly talented, hardworking athletes who have been told their whole lives, you can be amazing. You should be amazing. You don't even know what you're capable of. And so then all the pressure that comes from success, actually, they've had a couple of good seasons. They're taking corrections well. Their body is working. And so everyone's sort of loading on the praise. And it's at those moments where they go, I can't fail. Everybody's expecting this of me. I'm going to let everybody down if I make a mistake. And then instead of sort of leaning into their natural talent and abilities and just going harder, pushing harder, they start to cave in and they start to lose their aggressiveness because they just don't want to fail. They just don't want to fall. They just don't want to let anybody down. And then they get out of their body and into their head.
What is your athletic background?
I was a gymnast. My gymnastics career was not very decorated. I did gymnastics. I started too late. I was too tall. I was too old. I was too scared, basically. So I made it to about age 14, sort of a mid-range gymnast. And then my gymnastics career was sidelined by fear and mental blocks. I could not get through them. I just couldn't figure out how to overcome the fear. And then I started coaching at age 15. And then again, was up against this, I couldn't help these kids with their fear. And so that got me into sports psychology and studying specifically the phenomenon of skill loss and why these incredibly talented kids, their skills just poof. The skills they've already competed and won with, they disappear. And then found all the links of confidence and fear and how it all goes together.
So we talked a little bit before this about fear being probably the
the big icon that damages a lot of athletes' careers. What is like your special recipe for helping young athletes that are dealing with fear?
It's going to sound really simple, but it's baby steps and communication. But when your brain is up against a threat, whether it's perceived or real, imagine if you're being chased by a tiger. Your brain has a certain sequence of events that it's going to trigger that allow you to stay alive. So your brain's job is to keep the body alive. And your brain reacts in a very specific way on purpose that gets you the heck out of there. But if you are getting ready to go into a performance situation, whether it's business, whether it's sport, and your brain goes, get out, or freeze, or pee your pants, or, tense up every muscle in your body, that is not going to be useful. So we have to learn how to emerge into those situations in a way that allows your brain to feel safe. And a lot of it is just going, okay, this giant task in front of you feels really scary. So what little bit of it can you do right now? And then you do it, and your brain goes, oh, that didn't kill me. Good to know. And then you inch in the next bit. So instead of trying to jump in full force to this terrifying thing, you figure out, okay, what progression can I do right now that's going to stretch my comfort zone, but not freak my whole system out to where I shut down or kind of crumble under the pressure.
Okay, so I think fear comes up in several different places. One is during the competition, right before you're supposed to perform. And now it's your turn to be on the mat, to do your floor exercise or whatever it might be. And fear kind of sets in. You also have fear pre-competition on the car ride to the competition, to the arena, to the stadium. You also have fear the night before a competition. And then sometimes you have fear during the course of a week, during practices, relating to your coach, maybe even in doing a media interview before a competition. Mm-hmm. The consequence of that interview is you have more fear than you had before you did the interview.
Yes. Yeah, they always like to remind you of how much pressure is on your plate in those interviews.
Absolutely. So with that being said, just from my perspective, you have to have a ritual, like a pregame routine. You have to have positive affirmations. You've got to look at it from 30,000 feet sometimes instead of looking at it from your own skin. What do you recommend to your clients, your athletes, when they're dealing with fear in those different ways?
Yeah, so I love that question because if you give me 1,000 athletes, they're going to have 1,000 different answers to that question because everybody's got a different mind. They've got different triggers. They've got different thought patterns. So the best way that anybody, business or sport, can come up with their pre-performance rituals is to reflect on the facts and look back at, all right, what was your best performance? Okay, what were you focused on? And you back it up all the way. You can go a month in advance. What did you do that month before? What were you focused on? How was your training? What worked? And what did you do the week before? How was your training structured? What were you thinking about? What were you focusing on? How did your body feel? Then you go the night before. You go the morning of, right before, as you're entering the venue, and then at critical moments, and you reflect. And you go, what did I do? Because the amazing thing about sports psychology and why I am such a nerd for it is that nothing's ever random. People will be like, oh, I randomly failed. Well, I bet you if we back it up and we find clues, you can get your power back and you can figure out what happened and you can change it. So I have my athletes go back through, what was your success? Okay, let's find all of the stuff and do that for 2, 3, 4 solid performances and start to see the patterns. And then you also do it for the poor performances. And what happens when you reflect in that way is that you get to go, oh, wow, when I was running late and everything wasn't going my way, but I was distracted by that, I wasn't thinking about my performance, I slid right in and I nailed it. Okay, I don't need to think before I go. You start to look at those situations where the best of you comes out and you go, all right, what clues can I find here about what makes me tick? And then as you go, you continue reflecting. What went well? What didn't go well? What did I learn? And you continue looking back on those great performances and figure out what works and those poor performances and what doesn't work. And if you get really good at doing that reflection process often, what happens is it actually sort of dissolves the pressure and removes the fear of failure, because you realize, win or lose, I am going to gain valuable information about my process from this competition, from this game. So I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to show up. I'm going to give it my best. And then regardless of the outcome, I'm going to know a little more about myself than I did going in.
Absolutely. And so by going down memory lane and reflecting on your successes and your failures, you get to learn from your failures and you get to gain confidence from your successes.
Yeah.
Well, I have a 4-step process for my clients when I talk to them about this situation. You've got to be prepared for the competition. And especially in football, you have to do advanced scouting. You've got to know what kind of front you're running against if you're a quarterback, what kind of coverage they're going to run. There is a us versus them type of competition sometimes. So you've got to prepare, and then you have to do it in practice. You have to do what the coaches ask you to do in practice, because as you successfully do it in practice, it makes it so much easier to do it in the game. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is to visualize starting 48 hours ahead of time. And only visualize yourself making awesome plays.
Yeah.
Like, you got to put the movie, you get to pick the movie. Pick a movie where you're the star. Pick the movie where every scene you do well. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing is, once you get into the competition, you're either breathing, everybody has to breathe. They don't know they're breathing until they're out of breath, but it's like before a competition, some of the best performers take a couple deep breaths. It makes your whole body relax. Like when I coached youth football, I used to, the kids were all freaked out because of somebody else on the other team doing well, or the official throwing a flag when they didn't think it should have been a flag. I'd just say, take a deep breath. I'd have them do it 3 times. We'd take 30 seconds so they could take 3 deep breaths. Yeah. And at the end of the 3rd breath, it was gone, whatever the stressor was. So what I tell my athletes is, breathe the oxygen of belief. Anytime you're getting ready to perform, you're either breathing the oxygen of doubt or belief. You get to pick it. And doubt's something like this: I hope I don't mess up. I hope we still get to go to McDonald's after the game. Even if I don't, I hope my teammates aren't mad at me if we don't win the competition because I don't score my best. Compared to the oxygen of belief as, hey, I got this. A lot of guys in basketball, they tell the guy that's earning the money before the ball's even getting to the net. Mm-hmm. Because they feel it, and it's breathing the oxygen of belief. And so that's kind of my 4-step process.
I'm like sitting here breathing deeply, breathing the belief. It feels so good. Like, let me at it. There's science behind that, going back to the tiger example, if you are standing there with your feet flat on the floor and you're taking deep breaths, then your brain knows you are not face to face with a tiger. Your brain goes, threat, failure, failure. But then you stop and you breathe. It actually sends a message through a relaxation hormone from your brain that there is no threat, you're safe, which allows all those alarm bells to turn off. And then your brain sort of opens back up to, oh, good, okay, now I can be positive again because I'm not under threat. Breath is amazingly powerful.
Yeah, breathing is insane. Breathing is so powerful because it has a relaxing effect to your whole body, and it brings in confidence.
Absolutely. Everything that's happening in your body is sending messages to your brain of there must be something wrong. You take a breath, the way your body feels sends messages to your brain that, oh, okay, it's cool. You're free to perform.
No doubt. Okay, Rebecca, in today's competitions, regardless of the level, now at the pro level, it's a job. But let's just take the amateur level from college to high school to club to any level below that. How do you help your athletes not see their sport as a job?
That's a good question. I'm all about happy. Like my whole thing is perform happy. So I look at it like there's a couple different types of passion. There's an obsessive passion, which can lead to burnout. That's that, like, I got to be perfect. It has to be great. If I don't do this, I'm going to disappoint. These athletes are the hardest workers. They're going to train until they hurt, and they're going to keep training, and they're not going to say they're in pain, and they're not going to get enough sleep because but they care so much, and they're like, I'm so passionate. That's what leads to burnout, to injury, to overuse injury. Whereas the other side is, like Simone Biles, she leaves gymnastics in the gym. And she has, some rules about how she operates, that she does not take it outside. She leaves it all inside, and she has a balanced life. That's what I do. Of course, she's a pro, obviously, and she's obviously like working her job. But it's for even the younger athletes. Can you leave it on the court? Can you leave it on the field? Can you leave it in the gym? And when you walk out, you are now a teenager who has to go do your homework, or you are now a college student who's going to meet that club. And allow your life to be a little bit more compartmentalized. That's going to bring some more of the joy into it. But I always like to take people through a visualization of the time when you fell in love with your sport. You know, for the little swimmer who's just swimming in the ocean or in the pool, or the gymnast who's just like flipping and flying, and the athlete who's just out there like, oh, I love this. I'm so good at this. This is the best thing ever. Tune into that and sort of carry that memory with you. That's one part of it. But then a lot of the high-level athletes I've talked to, I ask them, what kept you motivated through those tough times when it felt like it was grueling, when you were afraid or you were hurt? And they always had their dream that was consistent. They had their dream that, you know, on those days when like, I am out for how long with this injury, and this is not how it was supposed to go, or I just failed so miserably at that world championship, they have their dream. And they have it so clearly in their mind. Like Jonathan Horton is a gymnast who he got inspired by the 96 Olympics, which was like, that was when I was, you know, the same age, and was so excited. And he had this image of Carrie Strug on the podium with her, you know, being held by Bella Caroli and her ankles all wrapped up, and she's getting her medal. And he's like, oh, I want that. And it got him through all those tough times through club.
Was that the 96?
Yeah, 96. Yep.
Yeah, I was at that event.
Oh,
when they won the gold, it was pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's like epic. My teenage years were like marked by that.
That's so cool. Okay, so let's talk about not quitting on your dream. Guys that make it to the NFL, guys that make it to like Tom Brady is 43 years old, and he's still living his dream. He's not playing for money. He's not playing because he has to put bread on the table for his family. He's living proof of a person living out his dream. What are dream killers? What are dream perpetuators? You know, what are the things that help people keep their dream alive, like CPR for their dream?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it is environmental, which I know, you know, it's not always within your control. But at the same time, if you have a voice as an athlete and you're in an environment that is killing your dream, you know, if you have coaches who are just like tearing into you and you're taking it personally, there are certain things that you can do. You know, if you're in a negative environment that's really punitive and really critical, I suggest that you design your own coach, and you figure out, okay, if you could have the best coach, the best coaching staff, the best support squad, who would you have in it? What would they be like? What would they say? You know, go into detail. What's the perfect coach that you could put into your corner? What are they saying to you when you're getting ripped into, or when you're in pain, or, you know, what do you need from that perfect coach? Then I flip it around on them. I go, okay, is that how you're talking to yourself? Because that's the only thing you can do, is bring that in and become that coach. And if you're getting ripped into, but you have, you know, little coach on your shoulder who's like, you got this. Don't listen. He's crazy. Let that go. You do you. I believe in you. Now get back to work. Don't mess around. You know, whatever it is, that the language that you need to hear, you're not always going to get it. You're likely not going to get it from your surroundings in a consistent way. And if you do, hallelujah. You know, I'm always like, yes, you have really patient coaches. This is awesome. We can work with this. But you know what? If you don't, fine. If you're getting picked on, if you're getting bullied, if you have things in your life that are tearing down your confidence, you got to be the good coach for yourself. And then making sure that you're focusing all your energy not on what's going wrong, not on what's not working, because then it's going to grow, but focusing on what is. And even if what's working is the tiniest little thing, if you only made this like a spaghetti noodle of progress today, you look at that and you throw a party. You're like, I got better. Good job. Like, you know, rest up and try again tomorrow. Like that's what you can control, is your inner experience and how you respond. But if you're in an abusive situation that's, you know, really not okay, that's tearing you down, raise your voice. and get out of there. That's one of the big things that I want people to know, is that you don't have to endure it. And it can't continue to be like that, where these kids are being torn down by adults who are being, verbally abusive.
But let's say you're on scholarship in college and you're close to graduating or whatever the case may be, and you really don't want to move, but you got this crazy coach.
Yeah.
Or let's say you're at the Olympic level or the professional level, and you have no choice. You can't fire the coach.
Yeah.
So what are the attributes of a perfect coach? And when that imperfect coach is yelling and criticizing and trying to tear an athlete down, what voice should the athlete hear from that perfect coach?
Mm-hmm. So I have the pleasure of working with a couple of D1 collegiate athletes, and one of them is in exactly the situation that you're saying, like on scholarship and being, verbally abused by this coach on a regular basis. And so what we did, we started with the good coach. And it was for her, it was different because every athlete's different. Some athletes, a lot of the guys that I've worked with, they actually need to get yelled at. Like that yelling lights their fire. It gets their competitive spirit in place. So for them, their good coach is going to be like, get your butt out there and do your job. But then there are some other athletes, male, female, who that shuts them down. It makes them feel like they're not good enough and makes them anxious and makes them afraid of failing and actually, ramps up the fear instead of the fire. So that's why each individual athlete has to reflect for themselves. What do I need? What works best for me? Because, they might need a firm coach, but a firm coach who can still treat them with respect. A firm coach that can also dole out a compliment here and there. A firm coach that can look them in the eyes and be like, I believe in you. And that's why I'm going to tell you to go get this done. But for every athlete, some athletes need just a mama bear who will be like, I love you no matter what. I believe in you. It's okay to fail. Or that for somebody else would be like, that's nice. That doesn't help me at all. So everyone needs to gauge for themselves what that is. So with this athlete, she came up with her good coach. And then what I did was actually help her process the anger, because there was so much anger around this coach and feeling abused and feeling, that she just was giving up. She was, sliding into depression. And so we lined it out and was like, all right, what are you mad at? And then I was like, write it all down, get it all out. What are you mad at? Everything you hate about this coach, go. Just dump it on paper. And then we got to get her power back, because a lot of the time I think it's easy to fall into this victim mentality where like, this is not fair. My club coaches were so wonderful and this coach is horrible. Why me? I should have picked another college, or this wasn't what this, and then you just sort of like sink into this ineffective place where I was like, okay, now we're going to look back at this list and we're going to find your choices. And it wasn't, and I was like, this is not okay. This is not acceptable. We are not blaming you. And we're going to take your power back. And so she was able to go, well, you know what? I chose to behave in this way. I chose to act in this way. I chose this college. I chose this. And she was able to look at it and go, oh, I do have choices here. Okay. So I'm going to choose to not focus on what's happening over here. I'm going to choose to do what works for me, and then not be so affected by him. And just her being able to realize, I choose to be here. I choose to do this sport. If I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it. Yes, there's a scholarship, but I don't have to. So she was able to walk in, be her own good coach, have that feeling of, this is my choice. This is my passion. And everything changed for her. And her coach miraculously was like a completely different person when she stopped rolling her eyes, looking at the ground, hunching over, and making mistakes because she was so upset. It's pretty crazy how that all works.
No doubt. Everybody's got a certain tolerance for tough coaching. Mm-hmm. But I think when the coach crosses that line, that's when the athlete has to bring out the perfect coach to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about confidence. That's really the secret drug for competitors to rock. I mean, if you've got confidence, and I've done some studies on confidence, and there's like a dozen different types of confidence. Maybe my way of breaking it down isn't clinical, but it's practical in the sense that sometimes athletes are confident until the coach says something negative. Sometimes they're confident until they look up at the scoreboard and see they're not winning. Sometimes they're confident until they see the opponent or competition and notice that someone, let's say they're 14-year-olds and someone looks 18 on the other team. So at the end of the day, you can't have conditional confidence. What I find is that athletes that are supremely confident, it becomes part of their identity, and that regardless of their environment, the competition, even the game conditions can impact a competitor's confidence. If you're a track athlete and the wind's blowing, it can affect a pole vaulter, high jumper, all these guys. All of a sudden now they quit before the competition even starts because the weather has dampened their confidence. So give me your perspective of confidence. Like, how do you build it? How do you, like we stop at gas stations to fill up our cars. How do athletes get refueled with their confidence?
So I love, there's a couple stories that come to mind. One is Michael Phelps. His coach was one of these kind of like awful coaches, but that did him a lot of good because he would hide his goggles, or he'd crack his goggles, or he'd give him a ripped suit, so he put him into all of these situations where he had to perform with his goggles full of water, or with his suit half off, or he was constantly kind of putting him under these pressure cooker situations in training, so that then in the 2008 Olympics, when his goggles filled up with water, he knew exactly what to do, and he counted his strokes, and he ended up with the gold medal. All of my confidence training is based on Bandura, and there are these 6 ways to build confidence. And I look at confidence like a moving target. And I think a lot of the time people expect, if I'm confident on Tuesday, I'm going to be confident on Wednesday. And if I'm not, there's something wrong with me. I want to acknowledge that confidence goes up and it goes down, and it moves. And the best thing that you can do is to fill up each of those 6 things. So it's the way you talk to yourself, or the way others talk to you, which if others are not talking to you nicely, then you got to ramp up that ideal coach language in your head. The way your body feels. So that's breathing. It's getting enough rest. It's doing adequate physical recovery to make sure that your body feels good. Then it's your mood. If you show up in a terrible mood, your confidence will suffer. So if you're playing your favorite music, if you're surrounded by your favorite people, if you're even just thinking about things to make you happy, that's going to improve your confidence. Visualizing what you see in your head. And if you're not good at visualizing, then you practice way in advance of the big day so that you get good at it, so that you get it to where you can flash those images in your head. You get inspired by people who do well. And that all of those together are going to continue to improve and give you successes. And the more successes, the more past successes you have, sort of the bigger that confidence snowball gets. But if you have a little failure, then you have a lesson, which gives you more information, and you still have the previous successes that you can pull from. And all of that together, it needs to constantly be maintained. It's like you're either in growth or decay. So you're either growing your confidence or it's subsiding. So if you're constantly just working it into your system, where you do your meditation, you do your visualization, you reflect, you surround yourself with positive people, you really diligently manage your self-talk, that all is going to continue to kind of build that snowball. And then if you have an off day, you're not going to take it very seriously because okay, I can learn from this. Oh, here's where I need to build it up. Okay, no big deal. Let's keep going.
Okay, let's talk about flow. What's the difference between confidence and flow, and how does an athlete find flow in a competition?
Confidence is like 1/10 of flow. There are so many factors. So, okay, we just talked about how many factors go into confidence. And then that's just one of the puzzle pieces that get you into flow. Now, the thing about flow is that there is no on switch. But if you find it, it's contagious. Once you experience it, you're more and more likely to create more flow for yourself because you're starting to figure out your formula. So it's all about, you have to have a goal in order to get into flow. So whether it's a really tough training set or it's a particular goal in competition, you have to have a goal. You also have to figure out exactly if you're on track or off track. So you have to have the ability to go, I'm on track for my goal, or nope, I'm off, so that the moment you figure out you're off track, you can get right back on track. So if you're racing, for example, you can tell, I'm below my pace, get back up to it. Or if you're on beam and you start to wobble, you can lock it right back in. Or if you're losing your aggression in play, you can pull it right back together. So that you have to be completely immersed in the moment, and focus is critical. Focus is probably as important as confidence, if not more, Because when you're in a competitive situation, when all the adrenaline is flowing, your heart is pounding, your focus naturally dials in and it gets a lot more narrow. And where you aim your focus will make or break your ability to be in flow. So if you're focusing on threats, your performance will deteriorate. If you're focusing on what you need to execute in the moment and only that, that's when you're going to be prime to then go out, like from where you're at as far as your skill level, you can stretch beyond your current abilities into this flow zone if it's the right amount of challenge. If it's too hard, you can't find flow. If it's too easy, you can't find flow. It has to be just outside your current realm. And then you also have to be completely focused, confident going in, feeling good, well rested, but that challenge is critical and focusing on execution.
Even though you can't flip a switch to get flow, what does it look like? What does it feel like for a competitor?
Okay. Flow is those moments where you are completely immersed. It's as if you are one with your sport, so you're not aware of the audience. You're not aware that there's anybody watching you. You're completely free of self-consciousness. Time typically warps, so it either goes faster or slower because your brain is so lasered in on what you're doing that the concept of time disappears. The concept of audience disappears. You become in tune with your muscles in a way that you maybe never have, where you can feel them working at their max capacity, but it doesn't feel hard. You feel activated, and you know you're working harder than you maybe ever have, but it doesn't feel hard, and your focus is laser, and it almost feels effortless. It almost feels automatic. Like every muscle memory you've worked to achieve locks in, and it just happens. Often people will look back and go, what happened? They sometimes don't even remember doing it because they were out of their thinking brain so much. They were in the execution, and they look back and go, whoa, that was a blur.
I'm sure there's a dozen or more things that are present during flow. Two things that come to my mind when I think about flow. One is excellent performance. When you're doing poorly, you're not in the flow. It's always when you're doing really, really well.
Yes.
And the second thing is, I feel like you are on autopilot. You've gone from the conscious to the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And you've gone from thinking to just being, just doing. And so it's also, and I do this sometimes even to this day, I'll do things that make me feel 8 years old again. Okay, I did that this morning. I went on a bike trail this morning, and it makes me feel 8 years old. I can't think about work. I can't think about anything that gives me stress. I can't plan ahead because if I do, I'm going to crash. It's not so difficult that I can't do it, but for me to do it well, I literally have to be in the flow. I have to let it go. I am looking constantly up ahead to see if somebody else is coming because this track is a 9-mile track and it goes both directions and it's a single track. So you have to pay attention to other people you might run into. And at the same time, I'm looking right at my path, which is a single path, to make sure I don't hit a tree stump or something that's going to blow out a tire and have me crash. So my focus just goes, I don't have any energy or capacity to do anything else. And if I'm relaxed and I'm not squeezing the handlebars, it is so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's that perfect challenge skill balance where it's going to take what you've got, and then when it comes, like when that like maximum capacity comes to the front and you're required to focus, oh, it's so fun. And that's another hallmark of flow. It is fun. It's so fun.
It is
like
fun.
Let's do that again. But it takes setting yourself up for challenge, which I think is why sports is a thing, because we have those little glimpses of flow and are like, ooh, I will work hard for that, to have those moments.
Yeah. What are the typical, most common things that keep athletes in ruts, and what are the things that the circle of influence can do to kind of help them get out of the rut?
So it goes back to this theory of growth mindset and fixed mindset. Almost always in these situations where there's this rut and they can't break through, there's an overwhelming focus on outcomes. And sometimes it's not the parents that are doing it. Sometimes the parents are like, we love you no matter what. You don't even have to do this. It's okay. We can quit. But the kid just has this, it's like, I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect. I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. No, I don't want to quit, but I don't want to fail. And so they're brought down by this over focus on outcome. And so parents, I mean, I can tell on the phone with a parent if they're the problem or not, you know, and so typically then my focus goes to progress and effort, progress and effort, progress and effort. You know, parents, if the only thing you hear from this is like what to praise in your kid is progress and effort. End of story. Not the wins, not the goals, not the points, not the medals, progress and effort. And if you do that for your child now, they will live a happier life. And then for the athlete who is just way too stinking hard on themselves, that's a little more of a task than a simple shift. But what we have to do is start with awareness. If they don't realize that what they're doing and being so hard on themselves is actually negatively impacting their progress, they don't realize it. They think if I let up on myself, I'm gonna be mediocre. Where really, if you legalize failure, but commit to learning from it, start being patient with yourself and kind, start asking for help when you need it, you will get the joy back and you will perform so much better. But they have to, over time, they slowly have to identify, oh, this being really mean to myself thing is not working. Okay, I'm willing to try something else. Sure, I'll try that. Oh, wow, it worked. So it's sort of, a lot of what we do is just like trial and error, just little by little. First, you have to see it. Then we got to start shifting it. Then we can build your confidence. And then eventually you get to a point where you can completely trust yourself and find flow.
Awesome. Rebecca, what kills motivation for athletes, especially younger athletes, that perhaps their parents play the sport, their best friends play the sport, their favorite coach coaches the sport, and it's where they get the most joy, whether it's being outside competing or indoors or in a gym or wherever it may be, and then all of a sudden the motivation to train, the motivation to practice starts to evaporate. What are normal causes for the drain of motivation?
You know, what comes to mind for me is feeling like you are failing. You know, to have something you don't really care about be a failure. It's like, okay, if I play a new board game and somebody else beats me, it's not the end of the world. I'm super competitive. Don't get me wrong. I want to beat you on the first try. Like, absolutely. I want to win. I'm a big fan of winning. Like, I'm a go big or go home kind of girl. But if it's something that is my sport, my event, my thing, my expertise, if I fail at that, that will be crushing. And I think a lot of the time, if it feels like there's a potential for that, and this comes from my own personal experience, you know, as I dive into my dream career, you know, several years ago, it's like, if I fail at this, then what? I was like, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just keep coaching gymnastics. Maybe I'll. And my husband's like, are you kidding me? You don't fail. He just rolls his eyes at me anytime that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if it's going to be okay. He's like, yeah, okay. Just like all the other things. And so for me, what worked in those situations was having someone who believed in me there reminding me that, oh yeah, I do get scared. And oh yeah, I am fine. And oh, I do better than I thought I would. Okay. That the fear of failure can really start to decrease motivation, but having your support squad around you kind of rolling their eyes at your insecurities, being like, oh my gosh, are you serious? I believe in you more than anybody. Of course you got this. Yes, you can go after your dream. And if you fall 47 times without me, we're going to go get ice cream and celebrate because I love you and you tried. You know, I think that's the best thing that can sort of like just, ugh. And my husband, he's like, you fail miserably? Fine. It's okay. I love you. I'm like, but no, but just to know, just to sort of be, just to have that reaffirmed. There's no pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to win. Then you can just relax and do the thing you love. Okay, so that brings to my mind how society and the media and perhaps even coaches and some players look at championship games. Like the Olympics is a championship game. That's what an athlete could be remembered for the rest of his or her life. How they perform at that Olympics, maybe the only one they ever compete in. Super Bowl, national championship game. We could pick any sport. What is the best approach for an athlete to optimize his or her performance in a championship game when the basket's still the same height, the ball's still the same shape, everything's still the same, but the consequences and the domino effect of your success or failure is way different. For Olympians, it could be
a lifetime of marketing revenue,
Hmm.
or you were the person that finished second that nobody cares about. And in the Super Bowl, it could be you're the MVP of the Super Bowl, and your team, like the Chiefs last year, hadn't won a Super Bowl in 50 years, and it changed so many people's lives. So back to you. How would you?
Yes, so those are all the things that you don't want to be thinking about right before that competition, that game. All of that pressure, unless you know that works for you. I work with a high-level swimmer who he is so good that if it's not an important meet, he's not going to swim fast because he's bored. He'll still win, but he won't PR. There's no way. But if the pressure is on, that's when he gets the best of himself. I know girls, gymnasts, who the pressure kills them, absolutely kills them. That would be the end of their ability to focus if they specifically dialed in on the pressure. So it goes back to that pre-performance routine. You want to be consistent. So for this guy, this swimmer, his pre-performance routine involves getting fired up and really ratcheting up the competition and like, this matters, leave nothing on the table. Go big or go home, win or die. That works for this kid, which is why we do that. But I don't do that for everybody. These other girls are like, what works for me is I listen to my favorite song. I laugh with my girlfriends about how weird the leotards are on the other team. We listen to the floor music. I think about lasagna. I take a breath and I get on the beam. And so if you do that at state championships, you do it at nationals, you do it at worlds, you do it at the Olympics. If that works for you, you do exactly the same thing. And if you have a well-crafted pre-performance routine or ritual that's based in facts, it's not like superstition. It's based in facts. Like, this stuff works for me, and you've done your preparation, you are prepared. You're physically ready. You're mentally ready. You just do it. It's just another game. It's just another routine. You just execute. Because if you get into the future, if you think about the medal or the outcome or the win or the time, it kills your flow, because flow can only be achieved in the present moment. So that's why those big games can take people out of flow, because they're thinking about the win. They're not thinking about the play that they're on in the moment. And so if you have a well-executed pre-performance routine, that will allow you to stay present. You don't have to make any decisions. Everything is programmed into your body, your machine. You just show up, do the same thing you did at every other game, at every other competition, and you just execute.
And when you compete against people that are thinking about the future, you're more likely to win because they may not perform at their best.
Exactly.
Okay, Rebecca Smith, Complete Performance Coaching. Where can people find you on social media, on the web?
Yeah, you can find me at the website, completeperformancecoaching.com. We have a bajillion blog posts and tons of free resources. Check that out. If you are a family with a youth sport athlete, come and join our free Facebook page. It's called Sport Confidence Accelerator. Lots of tips. I go live on Facebook a lot, just kind of answering questions and helping families through the saga that is youth sport.
All right. Well, thank you so much for our time today.
Yes, it's been such a pleasure, Craig. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.